Chapter 1. Pressure isn't the problem. Imagine standing on the edge of a tall building's roof. The wind howls, your heart pounds, and every instinct screams that one misstep could be catastrophic. For many, that image perfectly captures what pressure feels like. Yet, what if I told you that pressure itself isn't the villain? In fact, pressure is the very fuel that can ignite your potential. It isn't inherently dangerous. It's our response to it that determines whether it propels us forward or holds us back. Reframing pressure. A new perspective. Most of us instinctively view pressure as a threat. Our minds are wired to interpret high stakes and intense moments as indicators of impending doom. But consider this. If pressure were always harmful, why would we feel that surge of adrenaline before a big presentation, a critical negotiation, or an important athletic performance? That same rush can give you the clarity to hone in on what matters most. Pressure is simply the signal that something significant is happening. It marks the moments when the gap between who you are and who you could be is the widest. Instead of letting pressure paralyze you, imagine harnessing it to sharpen your focus, amplify your awareness, and drive decisive action. In this chapter, we'll dismantle the common myth that pressure is inherently negative and show you how it can be transformed into a powerful ally. The neuroscience behind pressure. At the heart of understanding pressure is the way our brain reacts in high-stress situations. When you're under pressure, your brain's amygdala, an area responsible for processing threats, activates and floods your body with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. This response, known as the fight-or-flight mechanism, is an evolutionary adaptation designed to help us survive dangerous situations. However, in today's world, the threats are rarely life or death in the traditional sense. Instead, they are the deadlines, high-stakes decisions, and critical conversations that can shape your future. The same physiological response that once helped you dodge predators can now cause your mind to spiral into panic and overanalysis. But here's the twist. This reaction isn't a malfunction. It's an outdated survival mechanism that can be reconditioned. By training your brain to reinterpret the signals of pressure, you can override the knee-jerk stress response. Through techniques like controlled breathing, deliberate exposure to mild stressors, and mental rehearsal, you can transform pressure into a state of heightened alertness and clarity. The role of controlled stress exposure. Consider the way athletes train. A sprinter doesn't shy away from the starting pistol's blast. Instead, they practice countless starts under simulated race conditions until the sound becomes a trigger for focus rather than panic. This is the essence of controlled stress exposure. By gradually introducing yourself to stressors in a safe, manageable environment, you can build a tolerance that allows your mind to remain composed when the stakes are truly high. For example, think of a musician who rehearses in front of small groups before performing on a grand stage. Each rehearsal builds resilience, turning the anxiety of performing into a tool that enhances concentration and energy. In the same way, you can train your brain to see the physiological markers of stress as cues for preparation rather than signals to retreat. The mental framework. Viewing pressure as opportunity. To shift your mindset, you must first change your internal narrative about pressure. Instead of thinking, "I'm under pressure, this is going to overwhelm me," begin to tell yourself, "I am experiencing pressure, this is my opportunity to excel." This reframing is crucial because it reassigns the emotional charge of the moment. Acknowledge the signal. Recognize that the surge of adrenaline and the rapid heartbeat are simply your body's way of alerting you that something important is about to happen. Interpret the energy. Instead of fearing this energy, harness it. Let it remind you that you're in a moment that matters. A moment where your actions will define the next phase of your journey. Engage your training. Remind yourself that you have prepared for this. Whether it's through practice, mental rehearsals, or previous experiences, trust that you have built the skills to manage and channel this energy effectively. By adopting this approach, pressure is no longer a force that pushes you into panic, but a catalyst that propels you into high performance. Real-world examples. When pressure creates champions. Throughout history, countless individuals have turned pressure into their greatest asset. Consider the legendary tightrope walkers who perform high above the ground. They don't disregard the fear, they use it. Each step is taken with acute awareness, converting fear into a laser-focused concentration. Similarly, elite athletes and top executives often report that their best performances occur not when they are relaxed, but when they are under pressure. Their training has conditioned them to use stress as a signal to enter a flow state, a mental zone where time seems to slow down, decisions become instinctive, and actions are executed flawlessly. One striking example is from the world of aviation. Pilots undergoing rigorous simulator training learn to handle emergencies by repeatedly exposing themselves to high-pressure scenarios. This repeated practice helps them form mental pathways that enable clear, decisive action even when unexpected challenges arise mid-flight. The ability to keep calm and act decisively isn't a rare talent. It's a skill developed through relentless training and a fundamental shift in mindset. Practical techniques to rewire your response to pressure. Now that you understand the potential power hidden within pressure, let's look at practical ways to transform your response. 1. Controlled breathing. Deep, rhythmic breathing can immediately counteract the stress response. When you feel pressure mounting, try this simple exercise. Inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. Exhale gently through your mouth for a count of 4. Repeat this cycle until you feel a sense of calm. This technique helps activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural brake on stress, allowing your brain's prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for rational thought, to regain control. 2. Mental rehearsal. Visualization is a powerful tool. Spend time each day imagining yourself in high-pressure situations, performing successfully. Create vivid mental scenarios where you feel the pressure rising. Recognize it as an energizing force. Execute your plan with precision and clarity. Over time, these rehearsals build neural pathways that make it easier for you to access a calm, focused state when the real challenge arrives. 3. Incremental exposure. Just as muscles grow stronger through repeated exercise, your mental resilience is built by gradually increasing your exposure to stress. Start by placing yourself in low-risk pressure situations. Volunteer to speak up in meetings. Take on tasks that push you just outside your comfort zone. Engage in activities that require rapid decision-making. Each success in these controlled environments reinforces your ability to manage pressure, making you more adept when facing larger challenges. 4. Reflection and debrief. After you've navigated a high-pressure situation, take the time to reflect on your performance. Ask yourself, what worked well? Which moments did you feel the surge of pressure most acutely? How did you manage your reactions? This reflective practice, sometimes called after-action review, solidifies your learning and helps you refine your strategies for next time. Building a habit of clarity under pressure. True mastery isn't about avoiding pressure, it's about using it to build mental strength. Consider these daily habits that can recondition your response to high-stress situations. Daily mindfulness. Spend 10 to 15 minutes a day in mindful meditation. Focus on your breath and observe your thoughts without judgment. This practice cultivates a calm mind that's less likely to be overwhelmed by pressure. Positive affirmations. Remind yourself that pressure is a sign of growth. Simple affirmations like, I thrive under pressure, or this is my moment to shine, can rewire your brain to view stress as a beneficial force. Scheduled challenges. Intentionally schedule small, challenging tasks into your day. Whether it's a timed work sprint or a quick public speaking exercise, these mini-challenges prepare your mind for bigger hurdles. By integrating these practices into your routine, you gradually shift your default state from reactive to proactive. You begin to see every surge of adrenaline not as a harbinger of failure but as a call to excellence. Embracing a new paradigm. The key takeaway from this chapter is that pressure is not your enemy. It's the raw material from which excellence is forged. Every high-stakes moment is an opportunity to tap into reserves of focus and energy you never knew you had. Instead of wishing for a life free of stress, learn to see pressure as the defining edge that separates ordinary from extraordinary. When you're faced with a challenge, remind yourself that the feeling of pressure is simply the universe's way of telling you that you're about to do something important. It's the signal that you are stepping into your potential. With the right training and mindset, you can transform that surge into clarity, action, and ultimately success. Your challenge for the week. To begin your journey toward mastering pressure, here's your first practical challenge. Identify a situation. Choose a low-risk scenario where you typically feel nervous or overwhelmed, a team meeting, a quick decision at work, or even a challenging conversation. Apply controlled breathing. When you sense the pressure building, engage in the 4-count breathing exercise. Reflect. After the situation, take 5 minutes to write down what you felt, how you managed the pressure, and what you could do better next time. Repeat. Challenge yourself to implement this practice every day this week. Notice how your body and mind gradually adapt. Remember, mastery over pressure doesn't happen overnight. It's a skill cultivated through consistent practice and a willingness to see stress as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Chapter 2. The lie your brain keeps telling you. If you've ever been absolutely sure about something, only to find out you were dead wrong, you're not alone. In fact, it means your brain is working exactly as designed. See, your brain doesn't prioritize truth. It prioritizes speed, efficiency, and survival. It doesn't care if your decision is correct. It cares that it feels right fast. And that shortcut has a cost. The shocking reality: some of your worst decisions are made with the most confidence. This chapter is about uncovering the silent saboteur in your mind, cognitive bias. We'll explore how your brain tricks you every single day, distorting reality, filtering facts, and hiding the truth behind a veil of instinct and emotion. But this isn't just about becoming aware of bias. It's about developing the tools to outsmart it in real time, especially when the stakes are high. The brain's default setting: quick and comfortable, not correct. The human brain processes about 70,000 thoughts per day. To manage that flood, it creates shortcuts, mental rules of thumb known as heuristics. They're useful for daily functioning, but dangerous when the decisions matter most. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky revolutionized our understanding of human behavior by showing that even the smartest people make systematic thinking errors. Not random errors, predictable, repeatable mistakes caused by the way the brain prefers to work. Kahneman's framework divides decision-making into 2 systems. System 1. Fast, instinctive, emotional. Operates automatically. It's the gut feeling you have when something just feels right. System 2. Slow, deliberate, analytical. It's the logical engine, capable of complex reasoning and weighing evidence. System 1 keeps us alive. System 2 helps us make wise choices. But here's the catch: System 2 is lazy. It doesn't kick in unless it has to. And most people coast through life letting System 1 run the show. That's fine for choosing breakfast or picking a movie. But for life-altering decisions, System 1 will steer you wrong, again and again. The biases that blind you. Let's break down the most common mental traps, biases that affect everyone from world leaders to high school students. 1. Confirmation bias. You seek out information that supports your existing beliefs and ignore or downplay anything that contradicts them. Brain why it happens. Your brain loves being right. It's less energy to double down on what you already believe than to revise your thinking. Chart decreasing real-world damage. Investors hold on to bad stocks. Leaders ignore warning signs. People stay in failing relationships. All because they're subconsciously filtering for what makes them feel correct. Tool to fight it. Force yourself to play devil's advocate. Before making a decision, write down at least 3 reasons why your current belief or plan might be wrong. It feels uncomfortable. That's the point. 2. Overconfidence bias. You believe your judgment is more accurate than it really is, even when you have no basis for certainty. Brain why it happens. Confidence feels good. Doubt feels weak. So the brain rewards boldness, even when it's built on air. Chart decreasing real-world damage. CEOs overestimate product launches. Athletes underestimate opponents. Individuals make life-altering choices without checking facts. Tool to fight it. Use confidence calibration. After any decision, rate how confident you were on a scale of 1 to 10. Then, track the outcome. Over time, you'll see where your confidence tends to overshoot reality, and learn to adjust accordingly. 3. Anchoring bias. The first piece of information you receive becomes the anchor against which everything else is measured. Brain why it happens. The brain loves reference points. It needs something to compare to, even if it's irrelevant. Chart decreasing real-world damage. In salary negotiations, the first number often dictates the outcome. In judgments of risk or value, initial impressions cloud the truth. Tool to fight it. Always ask, where did this number come from? And, if I didn't have that anchor, what would I actually think? Strip the context, and rebuild your opinion from the ground up. 4. Narrative fallacy. You create a story to explain randomness, even when the story isn't true. Brain why it happens. The brain hates uncertainty. It would rather invent a simple story than admit, we don't know. Chart decreasing real-world damage. People justify failed business ventures with elegant postmortems that ignore randomness. They connect dots where there are none. The truth gets lost in the comfort of storytelling. Tool to fight it. Ask, am I telling myself a story to feel in control? Then seek out the raw data. Look for complexity. Look for randomness. Reality is rarely linear. The Mars mistake, a $125 million bias bomb. In 1999, NASA's Mars Climate Orbiter disintegrated in the Martian atmosphere. The reason? A unit conversion error. One team used metric. The other used imperial. A simple mismatch, pounds instead of newtons. But that wasn't the real cause. The real cause was confirmation bias. Multiple engineers noticed discrepancies in the data, but dismissed them. Why? Because they assumed everything was fine. Their expectations blinded them to clear evidence that something was wrong. It wasn't a math problem. It was a thinking problem. And it cost $125 million. The truth about intuition. Let's be clear, intuition isn't evil. But it's only as good as the data you fed it. Imagine your intuition as a chess master or a slot machine. A chess master has seen thousands of patterns and built intuition based on deep experience. A slot machine just spits out guesses based on flashing lights and dopamine. Most people treat their intuition like the chess master. But it's often a slot machine. So how do you build real intuition? Practice in real-world scenarios. Get feedback. Reflect on what worked and what didn't. Repeat. That's how doctors, pilots, and elite performers develop instincts that work. Not by guessing, but by refining. The meta-skill. Thinking about your thinking. There's a word for people who outsmart their own brain. It's called metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. It's the secret sauce of every elite decision-maker. They don't trust their first reaction. They challenge their own logic. They question the source of their certainty. And they use tools, not just instincts. Metacognition means inserting pause points into your process. Before acting, ask, what might I be missing? What do I want to be true right now? Am I making this decision for clarity or for comfort? When experience betrays you. Here's the kicker, the more experienced you are, the more dangerous bias becomes. Why? Because expertise breeds confidence, and confidence can blind. This is called the curse of expertise. You've seen something before, so your brain rushes to match the pattern. But what if the pattern isn't the same? It's how skilled pilots make wrong turns. How veteran doctors miss rare conditions. How seasoned executives miss major market shifts. The solution isn't to doubt your experience. It's to add a second layer of analysis. Am I seeing what I want to see because it feels familiar? Is this pattern real, or am I forcing it to fit? A simple bias killer. The red team exercise. In military planning and cybersecurity, there's a tool called red teaming. It means assigning someone the role of opposition, someone whose only job is to find flaws, poke holes, and question assumptions. You can use this in everyday decisions. Create a red team for your thinking. Ask a trusted colleague to challenge your assumptions. Play devil's advocate with your own plan. Write a list titled, Why This Idea Will Fail. You'll be shocked at how many hidden truths appear once your brain is no longer trying to win the argument. Why bias is worse under pressure. In high-stakes situations, biases don't just show up, they take over. Your brain speeds up. Adrenaline kicks in. System 2 shuts down. Emotional reasoning hijacks logic. Under pressure, you're more likely to ignore warning signs. Double down on bad ideas. Get tunnel vision. Reject dissenting opinions. In other words, your greatest threat isn't the external pressure. It's the internal lies your brain tells you when the stakes are high. Pressure-proofing your judgment. Here are 5 pressure-proofing tools to protect your decision-making under stress. 1. Pre-commitment protocol. Before making a decision, write down your reasoning in advance. What would make you reverse it? What evidence would you need? This creates accountability to logic before emotion gets involved. 2. Decision checklists. Use structured checklists to reduce mental blind spots. Pilots use them. Surgeons use them. You should too. A checklist doesn't eliminate bias, but it makes the error visible. 3. Bias audit. After a decision, ask, which biases might have influenced me here? Keep a log. Notice patterns. Track your personal bias fingerprint. 4. Decision deadlines. Overthinking increases bias. Set time limits on important decisions. Force clarity. Refuse to wait for perfect data. 5. Perspective shift. Ask, what would I advise a friend in this situation? This simple question often dissolves emotional fog and exposes clear reasoning. Real-world case. Mia the trader. Mia was a veteran stock trader. Experienced. Sharp. Trusted. In 2021, she spotted a familiar market pattern, one she'd profited from before. Her gut said, this is it. She went all in and lost nearly everything. Why? Because her brain filtered out contradictory data. She ignored warning signs. She told herself a story she wanted to believe. It wasn't greed. It was bias. Afterward, she built a new system. Every trade required listing 3 reasons not to do it. She sought out opposing viewpoints before execution. She treated strong conviction as a red flag, not a green light. Within a year, she rebuilt her portfolio and her mental framework. She learned the difference between instincts and illusions. This week's challenge: become a bias detective. This week, don't just think. Investigate. Pick a recent decision. Something meaningful, career, financial, or relationship-based. Write down your original logic. Why did you decide that? What felt right? Now audit it. Did you ignore contradictory data? Did you overestimate your accuracy? Were you anchored by irrelevant info? Did you tell yourself a story to feel better? Adjust one future decision. Use what you learned to apply a new bias-proofing tool. This process doesn't just sharpen your judgment. It builds mental immunity. Chapter 3. Emotion isn't the enemy, but it can't drive the car. You've heard the advice. Follow your heart. Trust your gut. Go with your feelings. It sounds noble, almost heroic. As if deep inside you, there's a wise emotional compass that knows exactly what to do. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your feelings are not facts. And when emotions drive decision-making, they often crash the car. This chapter isn't about suppressing emotion. It's not about becoming a robot. Emotion has immense value, but only if you're the one in control. Today, you'll learn the core principles of emotional neutrality, the ability to feel deeply but decide strategically. You'll see how mastering emotion is one of the most critical mental skills in high-stakes decision-making, and how you can begin building it today. The power and the problem of emotion. Let's start with a radical idea. Emotions are not good or bad. They're data. They're messengers. And like all data, they can be helpful or misleading. Anger, fear, excitement, love. These emotional states evolved to signal something important. But they evolved in a world very different from the one we live in now. Fear helped our ancestors escape predators. Anger warned off enemies. Excitement pushed us to pursue resources or social approval. But today, that same fear might stop you from asking for a raise. That anger might sabotage a critical relationship. That excitement might push you into a reckless financial decision. Emotions are powerful, but they're ancient. And unless you know how to work with them, they will work against you. The amygdala hijack, when emotion takes over. In the 1990s, psychologist Daniel Goleman coined the term amygdala hijack to describe what happens when intense emotions override rational thinking. Here's how it works. A stimulus triggers a strong emotion: fear, rage, anxiety. Your amygdala, the brain's emotional threat center, activates instantly. It floods your body with stress chemicals, adrenaline, cortisol. Your prefrontal cortex, the center for rational decision-making, goes offline. You react instead of respond. You've experienced this. The heated argument where you say things you regret. The email you fire off without thinking. The impulse purchase that wrecks your budget. In those moments, you weren't thinking clearly, because your brain literally wasn't capable of it. Emotional intelligence isn't about avoiding this reaction. It's about learning how to interrupt it, to feel the emotion without being controlled by it. Emotional neutrality, the mental superpower. Emotional neutrality is the ability to feel an emotion without suppressing it, acknowledge it without acting on it, use it as input, not instruction. This isn't indifference. It's mastery. Emotionally neutral decision-makers aren't cold or detached. They're clear. They recognize that clarity doesn't come from removing emotion. It comes from regulating it. Elite performers, Navy SEALs, trauma surgeons, crisis negotiators, cultivate this ability relentlessly. They train to pause, breathe, assess, and choose their next move consciously rather than reactively. Let's break down what this looks like in action. The Stoic Playbook, Seneca's final moment. History offers profound examples of emotional neutrality. One of the most striking, the philosopher Seneca. In 65 AD, the Roman Emperor Nero ordered Seneca to take his own life. It was a death sentence, one born not of justice, but of political paranoia. Witnesses expected Seneca to panic, to rage, to beg. Instead, he calmly embraced his fate. He spent his final hours comforting his friends, writing down reflections on mortality, and carrying out the sentence with grace. This wasn't stoic suppression. It was emotional mastery. Seneca didn't deny fear or sadness. He felt them and chose how to respond. In doing so, he turned a violent ending into a powerful final lesson in leadership and mental control. The neuroscience of emotional regulation. Let's get scientific. When you experience emotion, your body responds before your mind does. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing changes. Muscles tense. Blood rushes to your limbs. And crucially, blood leaves your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reason, focus, and long-term planning. This is why emotional decisions often feel good in the moment, but lead to long-term regret. However, this system is trainable. Studies by neuroscientist Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett show that emotions aren't hardwired reactions, they're constructed experiences. That means we can reshape how we feel by changing how we interpret events and stimuli. In other words, you are not at the mercy of your emotions. You can learn to pause, process, and reframe before you act. Tactical empathy, the FBI negotiator's tool. Chris Voss, former lead FBI hostage negotiator, emphasizes a concept he calls tactical empathy. When dealing with terrorists, kidnappers, and criminals, Voss never tried to suppress emotion. He used it, but he didn't let it lead. He listened empathetically, while staying emotionally neutral himself. The key. He created a space between feeling and response. One of his most powerful techniques, mirroring and labeling emotions. Instead of reacting to someone's rage or fear, he'd reflect it. It sounds like you're feeling trapped. It seems like you're frustrated. By doing so, he diffused emotion, without becoming entangled in it. You can use the same technique on yourself. When you feel an intense emotional reaction, say, "It seems like I'm feeling overwhelmed. It sounds like I'm reacting defensively." This micro-habit creates space, and in that space, you regain control. Jacob's story, turning emotion into clarity. Jacob, a young tech CEO, once faced a make-or-break investor meeting. The pressure was immense. Midway through, one of his top investors launched into a harsh public criticism of Jacob's leadership. The room froze. The expected response? Defensiveness. Maybe anger. But Jacob didn't flinch. He listened, took a breath, acknowledged the concern, and calmly responded with data, vision, and poise. Later, he explained, I felt all of it. The anger, the embarrassment. But I had trained myself to pause before reacting. That one habit changed everything. The meeting ended not in conflict, but renewed trust. Because Jacob didn't let his emotions steer the conversation off a cliff. He kept his hand on the wheel. Training emotional neutrality. Here's the good news. Emotional neutrality isn't a trait. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained. Let's break it down into 3 components. 1. Recognition. Name it to tame it. The first step in mastering emotion is becoming aware of it. Pause when you feel the emotional surge. Ask, what am I feeling right now? Label it specifically: anger, anxiety, shame, excitement. Neuroscience shows that simply naming an emotion reduces its intensity. It engages the logical part of the brain and diffuses the amygdala's grip. This practice, sometimes called affect labeling, is used in elite therapy, law enforcement, and military training because it works. 2. Analysis. Interrogate the emotion. Once identified, ask, where is this coming from? Is this emotion based on a past wound, a future fear, a story I'm telling myself? Often, our emotional reactions are echoes, not responses to the present, but leftovers from past experiences. Recognizing this helps you separate truth from trigger. This is especially important in high-stakes decisions. A feeling of dread may not mean danger. It may just mean growth. 3. Strategic response. Choose, don't react. Now that you've named and examined the emotion, choose your response. What outcome do I want? Will acting on this emotion get me closer or further from that outcome? This simple pause, even just 5 to 10 seconds, gives you back your agency. You're no longer reacting. You're deciding. Practice drill. The 10-second rule. Here's a simple challenge. For the next 7 days, whenever you feel a strong emotion, practice this drill. Pause for 10 seconds. Name the emotion. Ask, what outcome do I want right now? Act in alignment with that outcome. That's it. You'll be amazed at how much clarity this creates. Most bad decisions happen in less than 10 seconds. Most great ones are born in that same space. Emotional neutrality is not equal to emotional suppression. Let's be clear, emotional neutrality isn't about hiding your feelings. It's not about being numb. In fact, people who master this skill tend to feel more, not less. They just don't let feelings make decisions for them. They partner with emotion, instead of letting it drive the bus. That's the goal. Not to silence the voice, but to decide when and how to listen to it. The relationship advantage. This doesn't just affect professional decisions. Emotional neutrality transforms relationships. In arguments, it lets you stay focused on resolution, not blame. In parenting, it allows you to correct behavior without emotional volatility. In romance, it helps you respond to triggers with clarity, not sabotage. The difference between conflict that builds trust and conflict that destroys it is your ability to stay emotionally aware and strategically neutral. Emotional granularity. Leveling up. Advanced emotional decision-makers develop what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between subtle emotional states. They don't just say, I'm stressed. They say, I'm mentally fatigued and anxious about expectations. They don't just feel mad. They feel frustrated because I felt dismissed. This level of nuance allows for far more precise thinking and much more intelligent decisions. This week's challenge, the emotion audit. For the next 5 days, do a daily emotion audit at the end of your day. List 3 emotional moments. For each, answer. What was I feeling? Why was I feeling it? How did I respond? Did that response align with my goals? By the end of the week, you'll begin to see your emotional patterns and gain control over them. Chapter 4. The Overthinking Trap. When analysis becomes paralysis. You've probably heard the phrase, think before you act. It's good advice, until it isn't. Because in real life, thinking too much is often more dangerous than acting too soon. Overthinking feels productive. You feel like you're being careful, thorough, intelligent. But here's what's really happening. Your brain is spinning in loops, chewing the same data, replaying the same scenarios, trying to find the perfect answer, which doesn't exist. This is the overthinking trap. And in today's fast-paced, high-pressure world, it's one of the most common and most costly decision killers. In this chapter, we'll break down the psychology behind overthinking, why smart people are especially prone to it, how it disguises itself as wisdom, and most importantly, how to break the cycle, the silent killer of action. Imagine you're standing at a fork in the road. Left leads to opportunity, but risk. Right leads to safety, but stagnation. You analyze both. You weigh the pros and cons. You imagine outcomes, forecast futures, simulate conversations. And as you stand there, the window for decision starts to close. Suddenly, both paths look cloudy. Neither feels right. Fear creeps in. Uncertainty multiplies. You freeze. And the opportunity? It's already gone. That's overthinking in action. It isn't clarity. It's fear in disguise. And the longer you stay stuck, the more you train your brain to associate decisions with discomfort, reinforcing the cycle of hesitation and regret. What overthinking really is. At its core, overthinking is emotional avoidance dressed up as logic. You're not processing data. You're avoiding the risk of being wrong, the discomfort of commitment, the fear of regret, the pain of failure, the judgment of others. Your mind builds a web of what-ifs so complex, it becomes safer to stay in limbo than to leap. It's not your intelligence that's failing you. It's your emotional courage. And until you address that, no amount of analysis will move you forward. Why smart people overthink more. Here's the irony. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to overthink. Why? Because you've learned to value analysis. It's rewarded in school, praised at work, associated with competence. But intelligence without decisiveness is like a race car without a steering wheel, fast but directionless. High cognitive ability gives you more mental horsepower, but it also gives you more what-ifs, more simulated futures, more alternate scenarios. And without decision frameworks to contain that complexity, you drown in it. You don't need less intelligence. You need structure. The 80% rule. Good enough is great. Top decision makers, from CEOs to military commanders, live by a principle called the 80% rule. If you have 80% of the information you need, it's time to decide. Why? Because the final 20% usually comes with diminishing returns and higher costs. That extra research, that last opinion, that one more data point, often adds nothing but delay and doubt. In a dynamic world, speed beats perfection. The cost of waiting is often higher than the cost of acting on imperfect information. You can course correct later, but only if you're moving. Analysis paralysis in action. Naomi's story. Naomi was a brilliant marketing strategist with a dream of launching her own agency. For 2 years, she researched. She built spreadsheets, attended webinars, analyzed competitors, designed logos, edited websites. But she hadn't launched anything. Why? Because she was waiting to feel ready, to find the perfect market, the perfect name, the perfect timing. It never came. Her mentor finally said, "You're not preparing. You're procrastinating with spreadsheets." That line hit her. She gave herself 30 days to launch. Imperfectly. She went live, got her first client, then a second, then a team. Looking back, she says, everything I needed, I learned after I started. That's the truth most overthinkers miss. Clarity comes from action, not more thinking. Why overthinking feels safe and isn't. Overthinking gives you the illusion of control. You feel productive, responsible, smart. But what you're really doing is avoiding the emotional risk of commitment. Every decision, big or small, carries risk. And your brain doesn't like risk, so it keeps you circling, thinking, waiting. But that wait has a cost. Lost time, missed opportunities, mental fatigue, eroded confidence. Eventually, hesitation becomes a habit. You lose trust in your instincts. You become addicted to maybe. The psychology of decision fatigue. Here's what science says. Every decision you make drains a little bit of mental energy. As the day goes on, your ability to make high-quality decisions decreases. This is called decision fatigue. The more you think about one decision, the less capacity you have for the next one. So overthinking isn't just a one-time delay. It's a chain reaction, a fog that clouds every other area of your life. That's why high performers systematize low-stakes choices. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit daily. Olympic athletes eat the same meals on training days. Executives automate routines to protect mental bandwidth. Because clarity isn't just about information, it's about conserving energy for what matters most. The solution: decision boundaries. To break the cycle of overthinking, you need decision boundaries. Predetermined rules for when and how to make choices. Here are 4 simple ones. 1. Time limits. Set a fixed time to make the decision. Small decisions, 60 seconds. Medium decisions, 10 minutes. Big decisions, 24 to 72 hours. When the time's up, decide. No exceptions. 2. Reversible versus irreversible. Ask, is this decision reversible? If yes, act quickly. If no, be deliberate, but still time-bound. Most decisions are reversible, but overthinkers treat them all like life or death. 3. Two-option rule. Narrow every decision down to 2 clear choices. A or B. Left or right. Yes or no. Why? Because the brain handles binary decisions faster and more confidently. Too many options equals paralysis. 4. The 5-5-5 filter. Will this matter in 5 days? Will it matter in 5 months? Will it matter in 5 years? Most of what we overthink barely matters beyond a week. This perspective restores clarity and courage. Rapid decision practice. Want to build decisiveness like a muscle? Try this drill. Every day, for 7 days. Make 3 small decisions quickly. Set a timer under 60 seconds. Act, document, reflect. This can be what to eat, which task to do first, who to call, what message to send. Don't second guess. Just decide. This creates a habit of forward momentum and builds trust in your own ability to act without drowning in doubt. Overthinking versus intuition. You might ask, what if I'm ignoring my gut? Here's the truth. Overthinking blocks intuition. When your mind is flooded with options, fears, and imagined outcomes, your inner compass can't be heard. The best way to access intuition? Decide fast, reflect slowly, make the call, then observe. How did it feel? What was the outcome? What would I adjust? You don't become a better decision maker by thinking harder. You do it by making more decisions, then learning from them. The cost of overthinking in relationships. This doesn't just apply to work or goals. Overthinking ruins relationships. You interpret silence as rejection. You replay conversations for hidden meaning. You delay vulnerable conversations out of fear. Overthinking turns moments into monsters. The cure? Courageous communication. Say what you mean. Ask what you wonder. Decide to trust or move on. Hesitation corrodes connection. Decisiveness builds it. This week's challenge: the imperfect action sprint. Pick one area of life where you've been stuck in overthinking. Career move. Relationship question. Personal goal. Creative project. Now commit to this. I will make a decision and take one imperfect action within the next 72 hours. It can be a draft, a call, a schedule, a step. Doesn't have to be final, just forward. Then reflect. What happened? What did I learn? What opened up as a result? Repeat this process weekly, and you'll train your brain to link decisions with movement, not fear. Chapter 5. Slowing Down Time. The Science of Calm Under Chaos. Time is constant, until it isn't. You've felt it before. The clock ticks at the same speed, but under pressure, time feels different. Maybe in a car accident. Maybe during a game-winning play. Maybe during an argument, an emergency, or an exam. Some people say time slows down. Others say it speeds up. But one thing is clear. Your perception of time shifts dramatically when the stakes are high. What if you could control that? What if, in the most intense moments of your life, you could stretch time, gaining clarity, poise, and precision, while everyone else feels scrambled and reactive? In this chapter, we'll explore how elite performers, astronauts, surgeons, athletes, special forces, learn to slow down time during critical moments. You'll learn how to train this ability for yourself, using simple, repeatable techniques that change the way your brain responds to stress. The myth of time dilation. Let's start with the science. When people say, time slowed down, it's not that external time changed. The clock didn't slow, you sped up. Neuroscience calls this temporal dilation, a shift in subjective time caused by heightened attention, emotional arousal, and accelerated neural processing. In moments of extreme pressure, the brain begins to take in more sensory detail, process information more rapidly, store richer memories. This creates the illusion that time stretched, because more data was packed into fewer seconds. The result? A feeling of expanded awareness. Like everything is moving in slow motion, and you have space to think, decide, and act. Elite decision-makers don't just experience this, they learn to trigger it. And so can you. The science of perception under pressure. When the brain detects a threat, physical or psychological, it activates the sympathetic nervous system. You know the drill. Fight, flight, or freeze. Adrenaline surges. Pupils dilate. Blood rushes to the muscles. Heart rate climbs. Breath shortens. The body gears up for survival. At the same time, the brain begins processing external stimuli at a much higher rate. Researchers estimate that in high-stress situations, we can take in up to 3 to 5 times more sensory information per second than normal. This hyper-awareness feels like time slowing down. And in some ways, it is. Your mind is expanding to meet the moment. But for most people, this flood of input becomes overwhelming. They panic. They freeze. They choke. Why? Because they've never trained for it. The goal isn't to suppress this response. It's to ride the wave with control and clarity. Training to slow time. The performance zone. Elite performers refer to this mental state by many names. The zone. Flow state. Quiet eye. Tactical mindset. Surgical calm. Different fields. Same experience. Heightened perception. Slowed time. Rapid execution. Calm within chaos. Let's look at a few examples. Justin Gatlin, Olympic sprinter. In the 2004 Olympic 100-meter final, Justin Gatlin faced a high-pressure race where milliseconds decide medals. Most runners report the final felt like a blur. Gatlin reported the opposite. He recalled each step, each breath, each sound in the stadium, in vivid detail. He said the race felt slow, controlled, executed with full awareness. That's what training does. It conditions the body and mind to anchor into the present, even at full speed. Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger, Miracle on the Hudson. In 2009, both engines on U.S. Airways Flight 1549 failed shortly after takeoff. Sully had 208 seconds to save 155 lives. No checklist existed for this exact scenario. No simulator had trained for it perfectly. But Sully's mind stayed calm, focused, deliberate. He processed more decisions in those 3 minutes than most people make in a week, all while communicating with air traffic control, assessing glide paths, and manually piloting a disabled aircraft. After the safe water landing, Sully said, "It felt like time slowed down. I had space to think clearly." He had trained for decades to meet that moment. Dr. James, neurosurgeon. Early in his career, Dr. James struggled with pressure during high-risk surgeries. As procedures intensified, his mind would rush ahead. He'd lose precision. He began to experiment with breathing techniques and mindfulness before operations. Over time, he reported being able to extend his internal sense of time, creating mental space even during microsecond-level decisions. "Now, no matter what happens," he said, "I always have time to think." That's not magic. That's conditioning. The 3 core pillars of time expansion. Ready to learn how to train this ability for yourself? Let's break it down into 3 components. 1. Breath control, the anchor of awareness. When your breathing is rapid and shallow, your nervous system stays in a reactive state. When you breathe deeply and rhythmically, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural calm mode. This keeps your brain online and your prefrontal cortex active. Try this technique. Box breathing, used by Navy SEALs. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Exhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Repeat 3 to 4 cycles. This doesn't just calm you. It slows your perception of time by grounding your focus in the present. 2. Sensory lock-in. Engage the present fully. Time speeds up when your focus scatters. It slows down when you anchor into the now. In moments of stress, feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice a sound in the room. Focus on a color or texture. Name one physical sensation in your body. This is called sensory grounding, and it's used in everything from trauma therapy to military operations. Your brain can't spiral into panic when it's locked into what's actually happening. 3. Mental rehearsal. Prepare the mind for pressure. Visualization is one of the most powerful tools to slow time during real events. Athletes, musicians, emergency responders, all use it. Here's how. Close your eyes and imagine a high-pressure situation you expect to face. See the chaos, the tension, the urgency. Now see yourself calm, clear, focused. Visualize breathing deeply, making precise decisions, moving with control. Rehearse it again and again. This conditions your mind to associate pressure with clarity, not fear. The more you train this, the more automatic it becomes under stress. Your training plan. Time expansion conditioning. Here's a simple weekly practice to build this skill. Daily. Micro moments. 3x per day. Pause for 30 seconds. Do 1 round of box breathing. Anchor to a sensory detail in your environment. Ask, what's actually happening right now? This builds baseline awareness. Weekly. Simulated pressure. Choose one controlled pressure task. Set a tight timer for a work project. Speak in front of a small group. Compete in a low-stakes game. Practice a tough conversation. During the task, monitor your breath. Notice your perception of time. Stay grounded in physical sensations. Afterward, reflect. When did I feel time speed up or slow down? What helped me stay present? Monthly. Peak simulation. Choose one situation that pushes your limits. Public presentation. Cold pitch. Athletic event. Conflict conversation. Use every tool. Visualize beforehand. Breathe consciously. Anchor during. Reflect after. This is how elite performers build time mastery. Repetition under controlled strain. The slow brain advantage. When you train your mind to stay calm under chaos, you develop what neuroscientists call efficient neural activation. Instead of your brain panicking, it becomes strategic. Working memory improves. Focus intensifies. Peripheral awareness expands. You literally process more per second, and that makes time feel slower. This is not a superpower. It's biology plus training. Why this matters everywhere. This skill isn't just for crisis situations. Time perception mastery helps you make better decisions under deadlines. Stay calm during interviews, pitches, negotiations. Respond versus react in conflict. Avoid rushing into poor choices. Stay mentally agile during emergencies. It's the difference between saying, "I didn't have time to think," and saying, "I made the best call I could." This week's challenge: stretch the moment drill. Once per day, find a moment of mild stress. A difficult email. A tense conversation. A fast-moving task. Then, pause. Take 2 deep breaths. Anchor. Notice one thing you can see, one thing you can hear, one thing you can feel. Act. Move deliberately. Speak slowly. Choose consciously. Reflect. Did time feel slower? Was I more present? Did I perform better? Repeat daily. Chapter 6. Signal versus noise. How to cut through distractions and see what matters. We live in the noisiest era in human history. News feeds refresh endlessly. Notifications demand your attention every few seconds. Opinions, hot takes, and bad advice flood every platform. Your brain, once designed to track a few key variables for survival, is now expected to process thousands of inputs every single day. But the mind isn't built for that. You weren't designed to absorb everything. You were designed to detect what matters. And that's the skill we're going to master in this chapter. The ability to filter, ruthlessly and intelligently, so you can focus only on the data that drives great decisions. Because when everything feels important, nothing is. Why noise destroys decision-making. Let's define 2 key terms. Signal: information that is relevant, actionable, and tied to your objective. Noise: everything else, irrelevant, distracting, or misleading. Most people make poor decisions not because they're uninformed, but because they're overinformed. The brain becomes overwhelmed by volume, loses track of relevance, and starts reacting emotionally rather than strategically. Psychologist Sophie Leroy calls this attention residue, the mental hangover you experience when your focus is pulled in too many directions. It clouds clarity, reduces working memory, and kills judgment. In a world addicted to stimulation, clarity isn't natural. It's a discipline. Jim Simons, the king of filters. Let's look at an extreme case of clarity in action. In the 1980s, mathematician and former codebreaker Jim Simons launched Renaissance Technologies, a hedge fund that would become the most successful in history. His secret: he ignored headlines, ignored market sentiment, ignored predictions. Instead, he focused only on data that showed consistent patterns, mathematically filtered signals buried in the noise. While other traders obsessed over financial news and market rumors, Simons built algorithms that tuned out emotional clutter. His average annual return? 66%, for over 3 decades. Simons didn't need more information. He needed the right information. So do you. The 3 types of noise that derail decisions. Noise isn't always obvious. It sneaks in through the back door of your attention. Let's break down the 3 types of noise. 1. Cognitive noise, the internal clutter. This is the noise inside your own head. Racing thoughts, doubts, what-ifs. Emotional baggage, replaying conversations, imagining worst-case scenarios. This noise consumes your focus, crowds your working memory, and blurs your priorities. Brain solution: mind dumping. Take 5 minutes to write down everything that's bouncing in your head. Clear the mental RAM. Highlight what actually needs attention. Discard the rest. This single practice can instantly reduce anxiety and boost clarity. 2. Informational noise, the external overload. This is the fire hose of content aimed at your brain. Social media, 24/7 news cycles, podcasts, blogs, opinions from unqualified sources. Feels like learning. But most of it is mental junk food, addictive, unhelpful, and mentally exhausting. Brain solution: the essential 5 filter. Define the 5 key inputs that actually help you move toward your goal: sources, mentors, datasets. Ignore everything else for 1 week. Watch your clarity skyrocket. Most of the value in your life comes from a few key sources. Learn to protect them and cut the rest. 3. Emotional noise, the reactive static. This is the noise triggered by your feelings: anger, envy, insecurity, FOMO, validation seeking, personal bias. This noise makes you chase the wrong goals, react to the wrong people, and make decisions based on ego instead of wisdom. Brain solution: emotion audit. Ask, what am I feeling right now? Is this feeling connected to my mission or my insecurity? Will this matter in 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years? Filtering emotional noise doesn't mean ignoring your feelings. It means learning to treat them as data, not instructions. The paradox of choice. Here's something counterintuitive. Too many options make decisions worse. Psychologist Barry Schwartz coined the term the paradox of choice to describe how increased options, in anything from groceries to careers, leads to more regret, more paralysis, less satisfaction. When your brain has to compare 14 types of peanut butter or 26 job paths, it burns out. It can't tell what matters, so it either freezes or picks randomly. Brain solution: deliberate constraints. Reduce choices to no more than 3. Use decision frameworks. Define success criteria before evaluating. Great decision makers simplify first and refine later. The Navy SEAL principle: front sight focus. In special operations training, Navy SEALs are taught a principle called front sight focus. It means, in chaos, identify the one thing that matters most and focus on it like a laser. During live combat simulations, SEAL candidates are trained to ignore peripheral panic and lock eyes on mission-critical data. Anything else is noise. You can apply this right now. In a meeting, focus on the objective, not the drama. In a negotiation, focus on the deal breaker, not the distractions. In life, focus on your true values, not the social media highlight reel. Filtering equals freedom. Signal spotting: how to know what really matters. Here's a quick tool to help you spot the signal in any situation. Ask the 4 signal questions. Is this directly tied to my outcome? Can I take action on this? Is this based on data, not drama? Would this still matter in a week, a year, a decade? If the answer is no, it's probably noise. Use this filter before you react to criticism, make a purchase, change your plans, follow a trend, respond to urgent messages. Over time, this builds attention discipline, the foundation of strategic thinking. Michael's story: from information overload to clarity. Michael was the founder of a fast-growing tech company, but behind the scenes, he was drowning. He was reading every newsletter, watching every competitor, analyzing every metric, constantly switching strategies. He thought he was staying sharp, but his team was confused. Progress slowed. Decisions reversed constantly. His mentor gave him a simple assignment. For the next 30 days, ignore everything that isn't one of your top 5 metrics. No articles, no podcasts, no brainstorming new projects. The result: 2x decision speed, higher team morale, better outcomes. I didn't need more information, Michael said. I needed more focus. That's the shift we're aiming for. This week's challenge: signal/noise journal. For the next 7 days, track your inputs. Each night, write down: what did I consume today? Which input helped me move forward? Which input distracted or overwhelmed me? At the end of the week, circle the top 3 sources of signal and eliminate 3 sources of noise. This isn't about perfection. It's about precision. Attention is your greatest currency. In today's world, attention is the most valuable resource you own. Every app, every ad, every algorithm wants it. But great decision-makers protect it fiercely. They know that focus drives momentum. Clarity cuts through chaos. Simplicity wins. You don't need more data. You need better filters. That's your edge in an age of overwhelm. Chapter 7. The 1-second rule. How a tiny pause prevents massive mistakes. Some of the worst decisions in history, both personal and professional, weren't made from lack of knowledge or talent. They were made in a split-second emotional reaction. A moment of panic. A flash of anger. A surge of pride. A whisper of fear. And in that moment, everything changed. But what if you could interrupt that moment? What if you could insert just 1 second between stimulus and response? And in that second, reclaim your control? That's what the 1-second rule is all about. It's simple. It's fast. It's free. And it may be the single most powerful decision-making habit you ever develop. The second that could have saved 228 lives. Let's begin with a true and tragic example. In 2009, Air France Flight 447 was en route from Rio to Paris when it encountered turbulence over the Atlantic. The aircraft's pitot tubes, which measure airspeed, froze, causing faulty readings. Inside the cockpit, the autopilot disengaged. Alarms blared. Conflicting data flooded the screen. A young co-pilot, Pierre Bonin, took control. In a moment of confusion and fear, he pulled the nose of the plane upward, believing he was preventing a dive. In fact, he was sending the aircraft into an aerodynamic stall. Over the next 3.5 minutes, the cockpit descended into chaos. Despite multiple opportunities to correct the error, the mistake continued. The plane crashed. All 228 passengers and crew perished. Later analysis showed something haunting. If Bonin had paused for just 1 second to think through his response, he likely would have recognized the error. The stall would have been avoided. The plane would have been saved. 1 second. That's the power and the cost of impulsive action. The neuroscience behind bad decisions. To understand how the 1-second rule works, let's look inside the brain. When you face a threat or high-pressure situation, your amygdala activates, the brain's emotional center. This triggers a flood of stress hormones. The body gears up for fight, flight, or freeze. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic and reasoning, is temporarily hijacked. This amygdala hijack happens in fractions of a second. Your body is acting on survival instincts, not strategy. This is great if you're dodging a predator. It's a disaster if you're navigating a business negotiation, parenting a teenager, making a speech, or deciding whether to quit your job. The 1-second rule creates a micro-window, just enough time for your logical brain to catch up. It's a neurological reset, a mental clutch, and it can change everything. Chris Voss and the power of the pause. Chris Voss, the FBI's former lead hostage negotiator, dealt with some of the most intense conversations imaginable. Lives on the line, terrorists on the phone. His secret weapon? A 1 to 2 second tactical pause before every reply. Why? Because when people are emotional, they expect you to react emotionally. But when you pause, you disrupt the pattern. You signal composure. You invite curiosity. You give your own brain time to choose the best move. Voss calls it mastering the moment. And it begins with silence. Warren Buffett's personal pause filter. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors in history, attributes much of his decision-making success to pausing before reacting emotionally, especially in crises. During the 2008 financial collapse, as markets crumbled and fear spread like wildfire, Buffett paused. He didn't react to the panic. He used his pause and predict principle. Will I regret this decision in 5 years? He asked. That 1-second question created clarity where others saw chaos. Buffett made calm, calculated investments, while others ran scared. Those decisions earned billions. The psychology of delay. Fast versus slow thinking. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman famously defined 2 systems of thinking. System 1. Fast, automatic, emotional, impulsive. System 2. Slow, deliberate, rational, strategic. System 1 is your default under pressure. System 2 needs time to activate. The 1-second rule is how you hand the steering wheel from System 1 to System 2 before a decision is made. It's not about hesitation. It's about prevention. You're not slowing your life. You're slowing your reaction, so your decision can be intentional. The fight example, Rodriguez in the UFC. Rodriguez, a rising UFC fighter, once let emotion get the best of him. During a heated match, his opponent began taunting him. Rodriguez, fueled by pride, abandoned his strategy and charged. He walked into a perfectly timed counter. Knockout. Career setback. Afterward, he started working with a performance psychologist, who introduced a simple ritual. Before every engagement, the psychologist said, you take a single breath. That's it. Just one breath before you act. Rodriguez began practicing this 1-second pause in every training round. Months later, he returned to the octagon, composed, precise, tactical. He won, and kept winning. 1 breath. 1 pause. 1 second. The real-life chaos test. You don't need to be a fighter or a pilot to need this. You're bombarded every day with moments that tempt you to react. A frustrating email. A disrespectful comment. A financial scare. An aggressive driver. A political post. An unexpected problem at work. Your reactions in those seconds shape your day. Often, your week. Sometimes, your future. The difference between, I wish I hadn't said that, and, I handled that well, is 1 second. How to install the 1-second rule. Let's turn this from a theory into a habit. Here's a 3-step training protocol. 1. Create the trigger. Pick one common reactive moment in your life. Example. When someone interrupts me. When I get bad news. When I check social media. Attach a specific pause habit to it. Take 1 breath. Count 1 Mississippi. Press 2 fingers together. Touch your wrist. This becomes your micro-interrupt, a pattern breaker. 2. Program the question. During the pause, ask one of these. Is this my best move? What outcome do I want? What would future me thank me for? Will this matter in 5 years? Simple. Fast. Clarity-inducing. You're shifting from reaction, response. 3. Reflect and rewire. At the end of each day, log 1 to 3 times you used, or forgot, your pause. What happened? Did I react or respond? What did I learn? This reflection reinforces the behavior neurologically, and turns the 1-second rule into instinct. Real-world application scenarios. Here are 5 places to use the 1-second rule immediately. Speaking head in conversations. Instead of interrupting or snapping back, pause. You'll listen better and respond smarter. Briefcase at work. When you feel overwhelmed, pause. Recenter. Choose what matters. Speech balloon on social media. Before you comment, post, or react, pause. Would you say this in person? Will this help or harm? Money bag in finances. Before a big purchase or investment, pause. Is this a reaction or a plan? Red heart in relationships. Before raising your voice or going silent, pause. Are you protecting your ego or your connection? This week's challenge, 10 pauses in 7 days. Here's your challenge. Use the 1-second rule 10 times this week. Each time, pause, 1 breath. Ask your question. Choose your response. Track it in a journal or notes app. At the end of the week, reflect. How many times did you avoid a mistake? How did it feel to take control? How would your life change if this became automatic? You'll be surprised how quickly your inner calm grows and how much smarter your decisions feel. Chapter 8. Confidence without arrogance. The sweet spot for brilliant decisions. Confidence is essential, but when it tips too far, it turns into your enemy. Arrogance. Where confidence builds clarity, arrogance blinds you. Where confidence invites learning, arrogance shuts it down. Where confidence empowers decisions, arrogance sabotages them. The difference between brilliant leadership and catastrophic failure often comes down to this fine line. In this chapter, you'll learn the psychology of true confidence, why overconfidence leads to ruin, how to calibrate your self-belief, a system for balancing courage with humility, and how to apply this to every high-stakes decision you face. Confidence is not equal to certainty. Let's make this crystal clear. Confidence is not certainty. Confidence is belief in your ability to figure it out. Arrogant people think they already have the answer. Confident people trust they can find the answer, even if they're wrong right now. That distinction changes everything. The Titanic, a tragedy of arrogance. In 1912, the RMS Titanic set sail as the most advanced passenger ship ever built, unsinkable, its creators claimed. Captain Edward Smith, with over 40 years of experience, ignored 6 ice warnings in the final hours before the crash. His belief? The Titanic was too advanced to be brought down by something so primitive as floating ice. The crew carried only enough lifeboats for half the passengers. Why? Because they didn't believe they'd need them. The ship hit an iceberg at full speed. Over 1,500 people died. The true cause wasn't ice. It was overconfidence in human judgment. The psychology of overconfidence. Psychologists have studied overconfidence for decades. The findings are alarming. Most people overestimate their abilities, especially in areas where they lack expertise. The less someone knows about a topic, the more confident they are in their opinions. Experts become blinded by their own experience, dismissing new information that contradicts what they know. This creates a dangerous illusion. You feel sure. You assume you're right. You stop listening. You stop learning. And that's when mistakes happen. 3 flavors of overconfidence. According to research, overconfidence has 3 distinct forms. 1. Overestimation. Thinking you're better than you actually are. I can finish this in a week. It takes a month. I don't need a backup plan. Yes, you do. 2. Overplacement. Thinking you're better than others. No one else gets it like I do. My idea is the only one worth following. 3. Overprecision. Being too sure your beliefs or predictions are correct. There's no way this could fail. I'm 100% sure this will work. Each of these leads to poor decisions, because they shut down curiosity, feedback, and course correction. Bill Gates versus Steve Jobs, a tale of 2 mindsets. In the early days of personal computing, Steve Jobs believed the Macintosh would revolutionize the world. It did, eventually. But Jobs was so confident in his vision, he refused to license the Mac OS, believing Apple would dominate the market forever. Meanwhile, Bill Gates saw an opportunity. He licensed Microsoft's operating system to every hardware manufacturer he could, becoming the dominant platform for decades. Jobs' overconfidence led to Apple's decline, and his eventual ousting in 1985. Gates' confidence, tempered with adaptability, made Microsoft a global giant. Jobs would return years later, wiser, more strategic, more open to feedback. The confidence calibration curve. Here's the paradox. The best decision-makers are highly confident, but always learning. They're bold in action, but humble in reflection. Think of confidence as a dial, not a switch. Your job isn't to turn it on or off, it's to calibrate it to the moment. Let's break that into a 3-part system. The confidence calibration system. Use these 3 practices to build confidence without arrogance. 1. Assumption audits. Before making a big decision, ask, what am I assuming is true? What if I'm wrong? What would disconfirm my belief? This sharpens your thinking. It also guards you from blind spots and confirmation bias. Brain bonus. Involve someone who disagrees with you. Not to argue, to stress test your thinking. 2. Challenge circles. Surround yourself with people who will call you out, will tell you the truth. don't care about flattering you. Your challenge circle helps keep your confidence grounded in reality. If no one around you ever disagrees, you're not leading, you're insulating. 3. Pre-mortem thinking. Before a high-stakes decision, imagine the decision failed. Ask, what could have gone wrong? List every possible reason. This is called a pre-mortem, and it's used by elite military units, top investors, and startup founders to identify blind spots before they become disasters. True confidence equals flexibility under pressure. Let's be clear, confidence isn't about being right. It's about being okay with being wrong and adjusting fast. If you need to be right all the time to feel strong, that's not confidence. That's insecurity wrapped in armor. True confidence takes feedback without defensiveness, stays curious under challenge, acts boldly but adapts rapidly. That's the decision-maker who wins. Moreira's story. From overconfidence to strategic leadership. Moreira, a brilliant attorney, graduated top of her class and joined a prestigious law firm. In her first major case, she was so confident in her strategy that she dismissed the input of senior partners. She believed her perspective was superior, fresher, bolder, more innovative. She lost the case. Badly. It cost her client millions. But instead of collapsing, she learned. She began auditing her assumptions, inviting contrarian feedback, and running pre-mortems before every major case. 2 years later, she became the youngest partner in the firm's history. Her peers didn't admire her certainty. They admired her growth. 5 filters for confident decision-making. Use these filters to check yourself before making a bold move. Am I making this decision to prove something or to serve the outcome? Have I tested this idea against other perspectives? Do I have a clear plan for adjustment if it goes sideways? Am I more focused on being right or doing what works? Would I make this same decision if I had to bet my reputation on it? If your answers are grounded, you're in the sweet spot. This week's challenge: the confidence log. Each day, write down one decision you made, large or small, and answer. What gave me confidence in that choice? Did I seek out any disconfirming evidence? What assumptions did I challenge or miss? Would I make the same decision again? This process trains metacognition, thinking about your thinking, and builds your internal calibration system. The more you do it, the sharper your instincts become. Chapter 9. Crisis Control. Turning Chaos into Clarity. In a crisis, most people freeze, flail, or fall apart. Some, however, rise. They don't just survive chaos, they bring order to it. They make decisions faster. Lead with certainty. Act with clarity. Calm others around them. These people aren't born different. They've trained for it. Mentally, emotionally, tactically. This chapter teaches you how to become one of them. Someone who can turn chaos into clarity in any situation. Gene Kranz, the leader who refused to panic. April 14, 1970. An explosion aboard NASA's Apollo 13 crippled the spacecraft as it cruised 200,000 miles from Earth. Power, oxygen, navigation, all compromised. In Houston, Flight Director Gene Kranz gathered his team and said something legendary. Let's work the problem, people. Let's not make things worse by guessing. No panic. No drama. Just process. Over the next 4 days, Kranz and his engineers turned what should have been a fatal disaster into a masterclass in crisis management. They improvised. Power conservation protocols. Carbon dioxide scrubbers built from duct tape and cardboard. A precise re-entry trajectory calculated by hand. And they brought the astronauts home. Not with luck. With systems, mindset, and method. The default human response. The chaos spiral. When crisis strikes, your brain's natural response is emotional spike, fear, anger, overwhelm. Cognitive shutdown, confused thinking, indecision. Erratic action, impulses, guesses, blame. This sequence is automatic. It's built for survival, but not for strategy. That's why most people overreact or underreact. Freeze and avoid action. Make rash decisions to feel in control. But elite decision-makers disrupt the chaos spiral. How? With structure. The Crisis Clarity Framework. Here's a 3-step system used by military leaders, trauma surgeons, firefighters, and elite executives to handle chaos with clarity. Step 1. The reset. The goal here is to interrupt emotional hijack and activate your strategic brain. Use one of these immediate reset tools. Deep breath plus physical anchor. Touch wrist, stomp foot. Say out loud. Pause. Assess. Move. Ask, what's the actual problem right now? This reorients your mind from reaction, observation. You're not fighting the panic. You're stepping around it. Step 2. The triage. You can't fix everything at once. Triage is about identifying the critical few. What is the most immediate threat to life, mission, or momentum? What can't wait? What's distracting but not dangerous? Use this simple system. Stop the bleeding, literal or metaphorical. Stabilize the core. Communicate a path forward. Clarity comes from prioritization. Step 3. The execution loop. This is where most people overthink or freeze. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a simple one, executed fast, evaluated often. Use this loop. Act, based on best available info. Evaluate, feedback plus outcome. Adjust, course correction. Repeat. This is called iterative clarity. You don't get clarity and then move. You move, and clarity grows. Shackleton, the master of crisis leadership. In 1914, explorer Ernest Shackleton set out to cross Antarctica. His ship, the Endurance, became trapped in ice, then crushed. For 2 years, Shackleton led his crew of 27 men across ice floes, freezing waters, and uncharted islands. They had no shelter, no communication, limited food. But Shackleton stayed composed, made decisions, took bold, calculated risks. He maintained morale through sheer presence, optimism without denial, realism without despair. And he saved every single man. Optimism is true moral courage, he said. That's crisis control. Jordan's story. Grace under pressure. Jordan was a paramedic in Denver. On one call, he responded to a multi-car pileup in a snowstorm. Chaos. Screams. Spinning lights. Multiple critical patients. His first instinct was panic. Too much. Too fast. Too uncertain. But then he remembered his reset ritual. 3 deep breaths. Assess the scene. Start triage. He focused on one patient at a time. Communicated with calm, direct orders. Moved with purpose. Later, a supervisor said, "You looked like you were in slow motion, but you were doing more than anyone." That's the illusion of mastery in crisis. It looks calm, but it's intensely trained action under control. Tools to install clarity under chaos. Want to build your own crisis response toolkit? Start with these. Brain mental anchors. Have a phrase or gesture that brings you back. What does the situation need from me right now? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Tap your chest or clench your fist, something physical. These pattern interrupts prevent spiraling. Card index dividers, the 2-minute breakdown. In a crisis, journal or voice record. What just happened? What are the top 3 threats? What are the next 2 decisions? This forces you into clarity, fast. Telephone receiver communication loops. Crisis clarity isn't just internal, it's shared. Use this protocol. State the situation, here's what's happening. Give one clear command or plan. Ask for confirmation. This prevents miscommunication, the #1 cause of operational errors in chaos. Crisis is not equal to emergency. Here's a mindset shift. Not all crises are emergencies. A crisis is anything that disrupts your emotional and cognitive balance. That could be a surprise bill, a sudden breakup, a social media backlash, a family health scare, a business downturn. Your ability to lead through mini-crises is the training ground for major ones. Every bad day is an opportunity to practice the system. Reset, triage, execute. The crisis aftermath, reflection for resilience. After a crisis, the most dangerous move is nothing. Most people move on without reflection. This means they repeat the same mistakes, miss the lessons, burn out from accumulated stress. Use this simple process. What did I do well under pressure? Where did I lose clarity? What will I do differently next time? Do this alone, or with your team, or with your journal. Reflection turns pain into performance. This week's challenge: controlled chaos drill. Create a mini-crisis environment for yourself this week. Set a 20-minute timer to complete a task. Add distractions, noise, pressure, time constraint. Practice resetting your mind, identifying the priority, acting with simplicity. Afterward, reflect on what helped or hurt your clarity. This simulates crisis thinking and inoculates your brain against panic. Chapter 10: Fearless Action. Breaking through mental barriers. We've all felt it. That moment when fear grips your chest, your thoughts scatter, and doubt floods your mind. It could be a life-changing decision, a business risk, a social interaction, or even something as simple as making a phone call or sending an email. We've all been there. But here's the truth. Fear isn't the enemy. Inaction is. Fear is the natural response to uncertainty, but it's also the signal that you're about to step into something new, challenging, and potentially life-changing. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck is what they do with their fear. In this chapter, you'll learn how to understand the role of fear in decision-making. Break through the mental barriers that fear creates. Take fearless action in the face of uncertainty. Build resilience and turn fear into a tool for growth. The power of fear, an evolutionary gift. First, let's acknowledge something important. Fear is not a weakness. In fact, fear is one of the most powerful tools the human brain has for survival. Fear triggers the fight-or-flight response, preparing your body and mind to face danger. In ancient times, fear kept us alive. It made us alert to predators. It helped us escape natural disasters. It motivated us to avoid dangerous situations. In today's world, fear still serves us well, but only if we know how to use it. The problem is, we often perceive fear as something to avoid. But fear is an energy. When channeled properly, it can power your most strategic decisions. It can sharpen your focus and drive you to act. When you understand how to manage fear, rather than let it control you, you begin to perform at your best. The paradox of fear and action. There's a paradox that most high achievers know. Action defeats fear. Here's how it works. Fear is often a signal of the unknown. When you face an uncertain outcome, fear rises. The brain hates uncertainty. It craves predictability. Action breaks the cycle. Every time you take action despite fear, you disrupt the anxious loop in your brain. You prove to yourself that fear doesn't control you. You gain clarity through movement. The more you act, the clearer the path becomes. Each step reduces the unknowns and diminishes the fear. But here's the catch. Taking action doesn't mean you won't feel fear. You will. You'll just learn to move through it. The myth of being ready. One of the most destructive beliefs is the idea that you have to be ready before you act. You hear it all the time. I'll make the move when I feel more confident. Once I have all the information, I'll decide. I'll speak up when I feel more prepared. But the truth is, you'll never feel 100% ready. Here's the trick. You don't need to be fully prepared or certain to take action. What you need is the willingness to take that first step, despite not having all the answers. When you wait for readiness, you're really waiting for perfection, a perfection that never arrives. Action is the antidote to doubt. The real cost of inaction. Think about a time when you held back because of fear. Maybe you didn't ask for a raise. Maybe you didn't speak up in a meeting. Maybe you hesitated to make a big life change. What did it cost you? Inaction is not neutral. It's an active decision that carries long-term consequences. Missed opportunities. Wasted potential. Years of stagnation. Every time you allow fear to stop you from taking action, you reinforce the belief that fear controls you. You create a cycle of inaction, and that cycle starts to define your life. Fear doesn't just keep you stuck in place, it moves you backward by robbing you of opportunities for growth. How to break the cycle of fearful inaction. Overcoming fear isn't about eliminating it. Fear is an instinct, not something you can just turn off. The key is learning how to interrupt the cycle of fear and inaction. Here's how. 1. Acknowledge the fear, don't avoid it. The first step is to acknowledge your fear. Don't suppress it, deny it, or ignore it. When you feel fear creeping in, name it. Say to yourself, I'm feeling fear because this situation matters. Realize that fear is simply your body's way of telling you that something important is happening. The moment you acknowledge your fear, you take away its power to control you. You're no longer running from it, you're accepting it. 2. Take one small step. Fear often paralyzes you because the task ahead seems overwhelming. The trick? Break it down into the smallest possible action. Instead of thinking about everything you have to do, focus on the next step. What's the smallest action you can take right now? Can you make a phone call, write an email, sign up for a class? Starting small creates momentum. Each small step chips away at the fear and uncertainty. 3. Focus on the process, not the outcome. Fear grows when you focus too much on the outcome. The future is always uncertain, and it's easy to spiral into worst-case thinking. Instead, focus on the process, the steps you're taking, the learning you're doing, the effort you're putting in. Shift from, what if this fails? To, what can I learn from taking this action? When you detach from the outcome, fear loses its grip. 4. Embrace discomfort. Fear thrives in comfort zones. It feeds off your desire to stay safe. But comfort zones are prisons. To truly break free, you need to intentionally step outside. The more you challenge yourself, the more you expand your boundaries, build resilience, strengthen your capacity for discomfort. Taking courageous action feels uncomfortable, but that discomfort is exactly where growth happens. 5. Visualize the worst-case scenario. What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst possible outcome of your decision? You might find that the worst-case scenario isn't that bad. In fact, by facing the worst-case scenario, you build mental resilience and prepare yourself for anything. Fear often thrives on the unknown. When you confront it head-on, you shrink its power. The fearless mindset, what's the worst that could happen? Fearless action isn't about being reckless or foolish. It's about being prepared to take calculated risks without letting fear paralyze you. Here's how to develop a fearless mindset. Reframe fear as excitement. Fear and excitement come from the same physiological response. Your heart races. Your mind sharpens. The only difference is how you interpret it. When you feel fear, remind yourself, this is excitement. I'm about to do something that could change everything. Practice discomfort. Start with small challenges that make you slightly uncomfortable. Speak in front of a group. Make a tough phone call. Go a day without checking your phone. By gradually exposing yourself to discomfort, you build your courage muscle. Act with purpose, not certainty. Fear often comes from uncertainty. But instead of seeking certainty, shift to focusing on the purpose behind your action. Why does this matter? What will you gain by moving forward? Purpose grounds your decisions and gives you the courage to act even when the path isn't clear. Case study: Amelia Earhart's fearless flight. One of the greatest examples of turning fear into action comes from Amelia Earhart, the legendary aviator. In 1932, Earhart made history as the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. But her journey was far from easy. She faced fierce storms, mechanical failures, exhaustion, fears of failure, and even death. But instead of letting fear stop her, she leaned into it. She wrote in her journal, "Courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace. The soul that knows it is in the midst of a dangerous flight is the one that acts with quiet calm and focus." By choosing to act despite her fear, Earhart opened new frontiers for women, aviation, and human achievement. She didn't wait until she was certain she could succeed. She simply acted. This week's challenge: Courageous Action Plan. Here's your challenge for the week. Identify one area where fear is holding you back. Is it a career decision? A personal relationship? A creative project? Break that area down into small, manageable actions. What's the first thing you can do to move forward? Commit to taking that small step, even if you're scared. Remember, the first step is often the hardest. Once you start, momentum will carry you forward. Reflect daily. At the end of each day, write down how you moved through your fear. Celebrate the progress, no matter how small. Final thoughts: the hero's journey. Every successful person, from inventors to athletes, from leaders to innovators, has faced fear. The difference is, they didn't let it stop them. They acted despite it. In every challenge, you have two choices. Let fear hold you back. Stay in the comfort zone, where nothing changes. Move through fear. Take that first step, and let the journey unfold. Fear isn't a roadblock. It's a checkpoint. The road to success is paved with moments of fear. But the key isn't to avoid it, it's to embrace it, to move through it. When you do, you'll discover that the path isn't as daunting as you once thought. The real question is, are you ready to take action despite the fear? The next chapter will dive into how to keep going when the road gets tough, and how to maintain your momentum in the face of obstacles. But for now, remember, the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Nelson Mandela. Fear will fall away. Action is your ascent.